She had learned, long before that moment, to say the words before anyone else could. It was easier that way, like pulling a thorn from your own skin, instead of waiting for someone else to press on it. Still, when she whispered, "I'm not pretty," her voice shook, thin as winter glass. The wind carried the words away across the open prairie, but the man standing in front of her heard them clearly. She could tell by the way his eyes softened, not with pity, but with something else, something steadier. The woman stood at the edge of the ranch yard, hands rough and scarred, dress patched more times than she could count. Dust clung to her boots. A faint bruise colored her cheek, already yellowing from age, and a thin scar traced her jawline like a reminder she could never erase. She had once tried to hide those things once, but life had beaten the vanity out of her the same way it beat the softness from her hands. Behind her, the small cabin leaned slightly to the left, as if it too was tired of standing. She had built most of it herself after burying the man who had promised to protect her. The grave still sat beneath the cottonwood tree, marked only by a wooden cross she carved with trembling fingers. No one came to visit. No one remembered him. And fewer still remembered her, except when they needed cheap labor or someone to blame. The cowboy had arrived that morning, riding slow, not the way men did when they came to inspect or judge. His horse was dark, steady, and patient, much like him. He removed his hat when he spoke to her, which startled her more than his words. Men like him rarely bothered with politeness toward women like her. "I need someone who can work," he had said. "Someone who won't lie. Someone who won't leave when things get hard." She had laughed then, a short, broken sound. "Things have always been hard," she wanted to say. Instead, she looked down at her hands and whispered the truth she believed ended every conversation before it began. "I'm not pretty." She expected the usual silence, the subtle shift, the polite excuse. Instead, the cowboy smiled, just barely. "That's fine," he said. "I need honest, not fancy." The words struck her harder than any insult ever had. They stood there a long moment, the prairie holding its breath. He didn't look at her scars as flaws. He didn't glance toward the house like he was measuring how much she lacked. He simply waited, as though the choice truly belonged to her. She followed him because she didn't know how not to. The ride to his ranch took most of the day. She spoke little. He didn't press. When night came, he gave her a lantern and pointed toward a small room off the main house. "You'll sleep there," he said. Door locks from the inside. That mattered more than he knew. Days turned into weeks. Work was relentless, mending fences, hauling water, breaking stubborn ground, but she had known worse. What she hadn't known was quiet respect. He paid her fairly. He ate at the same table. He never once commented on her face, her scars, or her past. Other men came through the ranch, buyers, neighbors, drifters. Some stared, some whispered. Once one laughed. Before she could shrink into herself, the cowboy spoke, voice low and deadly calm. "She works harder than any man here. If that bothers you, there's the road." No one laughed after that. At night, alone in her small room, she cried, not from pain, but confusion. Kindness felt dangerous when you weren't used to it. Trust felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and hoping the ground didn't disappear. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the fields, she finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest. "Why me?" He didn't answer right away. He leaned against the fence, eyes on the horizon. "Because you didn't pretend," he said. "Because you didn't ask for saving. And because I know what it's like to be measured by what you aren't instead of what you are." She looked at him then, really looked. The lines on his face weren't just from age. They were from loss. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. Rumors travel fast on the frontier, especially when something doesn't fit where people think it should. A scarred woman working beside a respected cowboy. It unsettled people. Some said she was trouble. Others said she had bewitched him. None bothered asking the truth. The truth was quieter than gossip ever is. She woke before dawn every morning, same as him, sometimes earlier. She learned the rhythms of the land, the way the horses shifted before storms, the way the wind carried warnings. Slowly, without meaning to, she learned him too. He drank his coffee black. He never spoke of his wife. but her presence lingered in the careful way he handled loneliness. One night, a storm tore across the plains like a living thing. Thunder cracked the sky open. A fence collapsed. A horse broke free. Without thinking, she ran into the rain. Lightning lit the world in white fire as she wrestled the gate closed, mud swallowing her boots. When she returned, soaked and shaking, he grabbed her shoulders. Not hard, just enough to make sure she was real, alive. "You could have been killed," he said, voice breaking. "So could you," she replied. That was the night everything shifted. Weeks later, a man from her past found her. He rode in drunk, loud, cruel. Called her name she thought she'd buried. The ranch fell silent. Workers froze. Before fear could claim her again, the cowboy stepped between them. "She stays," he said. "You leave." The man sneered. "You protecting that?" The punch came fast, final. Afterward, she sat shaking on the porch, shame clawing back into her chest. "I ruined things," she whispered. "I always have." He knelt in front of her, eyes level with hers. "You didn't ruin a thing. You survived." The words broke something open inside her. Months passed. The ranch prospered. Laughter returned to the house. Hers, soft at first, then stronger. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she stood beside him at the fence. "I never thought I'd belong anywhere," she said. He looked at her, not past her, not around her, but at her. "You already do." When he finally asked her to stay, not as help, but as his partner, she cried harder than she ever had. "I'm still not pretty," she whispered. He smiled, voice steady. "And I still don't need fancy." The wind carried their laughter across the fields, and for the first time the land felt like home.